Our presentation will be covering the Criminalization and Punishment Project, but will be referred to as CPEP for the remainder of the presentation.
The outline for our presentation will begin by Dana focusing on who is CPEP and what they do, and how did CPEP create a social movement. Gabby will be focusing on framing the issue, and Miriam will be focusing on mobilizing in the capital city and how police actions affect prisons. Lastly, Sarah will be focusing on the role of social media and the role of media's depiction of the issue.
I was horrified when I began to hear about the conditions at the Ottawa Carleton Detention Centre here in our nation's capital, in one of the richest, most progressive countries in the world.
Anytime I've had a client who's from out of town who's been able to compare their experience at OCDC, has consistently said that their experience at OCDC has been the worst.
Ottawa Carleton Detention Center is awful. I'm telling you, animals are treated better than they are at that jail.
I'll call whatever you want, but this problem is not going away, and it's only getting worse.
CPEP is a volunteer organization dedicated to raising awareness on injustices currently occurring within Canadian prisons. It was established as a joint project between Carleton University and Ottawa U in 2012 by Professor Aaron Doyle and his PhD student Justin Pichet. These two organizers have mobilized various members of the Ottawa community, from those who have served prison sentences at the Ottawa Carleton Detention Centre, to their family and friends, to frontline workers in the criminal justice system, and students studying criminology. They work as a mechanism for facilitating collective action in response to growing social and political concerns associated with criminalization. CPEP's vision statement outlines various objectives for their organization. The ones relevant to their mobilization tactics include number 3, challenging inequality, privilege, and accepted social structures which have invisible harms on marginalized persons, as well as building a capacity amongst CPEP members to value all contributions, challenging differences, and offering mutual support. Both of these goals refer to how individuals relate to one another in the context of creating a social movement. By creating genuine care for fellow activists and marginalized prisoners, CPEP's vision accommodates effective organizing as defined by Chris Dixon. Having a shared passion for the issue makes for more concentrated efforts in making progressive change. CPEP puts a strong emphasis on establishing dialogue between incarcerated offenders, policymakers, researchers, and the general public. Their meetings are open to the public and are used by the organizers as workshops for attendees to learn how to make real action. James Jasper describes the expression of personal opinions which individuals have on political matters as weapons of the weak, when combined together can be persuasive. By hosting open workshops, CPEP is able to mobilize activists by giving them real-world knowledge on how to apply their activism in making change. As an example, I attended a CPEP meeting at Ottawa U on March 7th to learn about the specificities and nuances that must be considered when filling out a Freedom of Information request. CPEP uses their Freedom of Information rights to get access to relevant records such as prison food budgets, collect call phone bills, and offender write-ups, to name a few. They can then use this knowledge as a foundation in organizing a campaign or social movement. Information gathered from documents of interest on notable problems within prisons was the basis for the Jail Accountability Hotline campaign, which allows for prisoners to discuss their human rights concerns with a prisoner rights activist. This operator can then use the gathered evidence of state-sanctioned corruption to create a social movement and address to it.
Framing is used to persuade individuals and groups of the problem a social movement is advocating for. Using language and ideas, framing is a way of thinking about problems or issues that will motivate individuals or groups to create change and take action. In the book, The Sociological Imagination, written by C. Wright Mills, he states that private issues are public problems. This is true in the case of CPEP. CPEP is fighting for the rights of prisoners. Prisoners cannot reach family members who have cell phones, as Bell, the only communication provider for prisons, has not made calling cell phones accessible for prisoners, meaning they can only call landlines, even though many people no longer have landlines anymore. They have raised prices immensely to call landlines, making it extremely expensive for prisoners to get a hold of anyone. This issue affects prisoners as they sometimes cannot afford to call the most important people in their lives for support. This has and could potentially lead to more people developing mental health problems. CPEP wants full prison reform with mental health resources and better means of communication for prisoners. They advocate for resources to be implemented before one even arrives in prison as a preventative measure. This will ensure that criminalized individuals have their needs met as opposed to being incarcerated with no support. CPEP frames prisons as negative institutions. They do this by educating people at various social events that they host and by rallying and objecting the current state of prisons in Canada. They also make sure to get social media involved to spread awareness about CPEP and future events they will be holding. I will now play a video of a CPEP event. This video is from last Wednesday night at the Pick Up the Microphone event hosted by CPEP and is a great example of how organizers can use arts as a medium for articulating an issue. It shows a young woman performing spoken word about prisons in Canada and framing prisons as negative institutions.
Occupations if there wasn't altercations. So they broadcast violent expectations, police and soldiers slaughtering for a lifetime appreciation, and wonder why your children are shooting up their schools for a lifetime incarceration. The system's run by liars who every day conspire how to make the crime rate higher and how to cause more gunfire so they can open more federal resorts for convicts to retire. Thank you.
The types of organizing that occurs within CPEP because of being in the capital city is that it allows for access to many types of organizations to support the program. The program is able to thrive and sustain itself through the help of organizations such as the Moms Group and the help of students at the undergraduate and graduate level. The help from students allows for the spread of information about the organization to more people through social interactions. This gives students a chance to experience working with the organization and to understand what CPEP is about. The advantage of being in a larger city allows for the expansion and support from many different types of organizations that have an interest in the topic of human rights and prisoner justice. Organizations that seek to work with CPEP include the services within the prison system, government institutions, human rights groups, phone companies, and other groups looking to work towards justice for prisoners. According to the website, CPEP works with many organizations such as the Moms Groups, Circles of Support and Accountability Ottawa, No One is Illegal, and Immigration Detention, Canadian Prison Counseling Inc., and many more. Through the cooperation of these organizations, it allows for the integration of different perspectives and opinions on how to tackle the challenges that the program can face. According to Wood and Fiortier, the staff, police, and guards are former repressive authorities that are used to help the state keep control on people through the imbalance of power. States are institutions that combine both coercion and consent to shape repressive tactics. Within the prison systems, many prisoners feel that they are mistreated by the staff or the guards, which is a form of repressive authorities. Repressive authorities play a particular role in state formation, facilitating the power by those in control. The prisoners that have been sent to a facility where they have to follow the directions that are given to them in order to live, even though they may face abuse in physical or verbal forms. According to Belsame, Doyle, Pinch, and Spite, many prisoners reported that they experienced these forms of abusive verbal mocking from guards, such as being judged for their mental illnesses. These oppressive authorities can be seen as a form of barrier that prevents the prisoners from feeling safe and secure while staying in prisons. According to Iverson, the prison officers were seen as being discriminatory and paid little attention to the prisoners' needs. That is often why inmates choose to isolate themselves to avoid confrontation with the prisoner officer. Having to submit to prison regulations may expirate the inmates' feelings of humiliation and provide an atmosphere where good communication with prison officers is hard to achieve. That is why good forms of communication is important for the prisoners and officers. That way everyone is able to feel safe and secure. The way the officers treat the inmates is important to how it can affect people's behaviors to one another. According to Simones, humane treatment is the most effective way of managing a prison safely and creating conditions to rehabilitate prisoners to become productive members of society. The more humane the environment, the safer for all concerned, prisoners and staff alike. This meaning that if the prisoners were treated in a humane way by the guards and staff, then they would be able to have a better living environment and less feelings of humiliation or trauma.
Okay, so social media is absolutely huge for CPEP. It supports everything that we do. We post on social media pretty much every day on Facebook and Twitter. Really, a lot of our support comes through social media, a lot of our support and influence when we're trying to get people out to meetings, events, protests. Social media is really key for all of that. It snowballs. It's really helped publicize CPEP, especially beyond Ottawa as well. So we had a protest a few weeks ago about the Bell Let's Talk campaign and the very high rates that are being charged prisoners' families for phone calls from prison. And we made a couple of videos and they were shared, both of them were shared a couple of hundred times and viewed by over 10,000 people. So social media has been key for us. I think CPEP would be very different from what it is if we weren't in the age of social media.
When looking at social media, CPEP has both a website and Facebook page, which aid in distributing content online to viewers who cannot attend events in person. By having a Facebook page, it also allows them to create events to reach more people and also notify how many people may or may not attend. With the growing number of social media platforms and technological advancement, it becomes a necessity to conduct outreach online as well as in person. We can see the benefits of this in Kaufman's text, where the 2017 Women's March in St. Louis all started from a few Facebook posts by two women who had never planned a protest before. Soon after, over 10,000 responded online, and this is one of the many reasons why social media plays a large role in social activism. Conversely, if potential mishappenings arise during organizing, it can also go viral and ruin your reputation for the movement. For example, the name Million Woman March was being led by white women and appropriated the name from a black-led 1997 Philadelphia event, a major gathering of black women. This soon went viral, and the social media criticism was swift and massive, calling out the racial blinders, which is a clear example of how social media can also be counterintuitive. In addition, media coverage played a large role for CPEP, as it brought thousands of new activists together and developed a constituency for the movement. This can be seen during the recent protests outside the Bell Tower on Elgin Street, where they advocated against the Bell Let's Talk campaign, since Bell is the only one that can change the fact that jails across Canada do not allow prisoners to call cell phones and only landlines. Since we are advancing with technology, not many people have a landline, and this becomes an issue for prisoners as they cannot contact families. This inability has shown an increase in worsening mental health, as well as not being able to access prescriptions or adequate resources. Jared, a former prisoner, spoke to us during a CPEP meeting about how some prisoners have to decide whether to use their money for a phone call at a rate of $25 for 20 minutes or to buy proper meals or support their families. During the protests, CBC News, Ottawa Matters, and other local news stations attended and gained more viewers for CPEP through their outlets with the powerful slogans and signs of the protesters like myself. Similarly, the ACT UP and AIDS Action Now groups created images, slogans, and street protests that grabbed media attention and won consistent victories. An example of this can be seen here with me on the left and the chair of sociology, Aaron Doyle, on the right.